French president warned G7 members to resist a potential U.S. drift toward crude hegemony following Trump's tariffs on allies. Emmanuel Macron has called on other members of the G7 to stand up to Donald Trump's trade policies in the face of what he described as the threat of a new U.S. hegemony. The French president was speaking alongside the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who is hosting the G7 summit in Quebec amid sharp disagreements between the U.S. president and the 6 other leaders of industrialized liberal democracies over trade, climate change and the nuclear deal with Iran. Macron called on other G7 leaders not to water down a joint communique at the end of the summit at the expense of shared values, simply in an effort to win Trump's signature, warning that a G6+1 outcome was possible. Both Trudeau and Macron emphasized the importance of dialogue and courtesy at the summit, which begins on Friday. They said it was an essential forum for finding common ground and resolving differences. The G7 is an opportunity to meet to have frank and open discussions between countries that are longtime allies and friends, Trudeau argued. Both men, however, voiced anger over Trump's imposition of steel and aluminum tariffs against close allies, supposedly on national security grounds. The EU and Canada have imposed reciprocal sanctions on U.S. goods and have taken their complaint to the World Trade Organization. Trudeau described the tariffs as unilateral and illegal, and the national security pretext as risible. He added that Trump's unacceptable actions are going to harm his own citizens. It is American jobs that are going to be lost because of the actions of this administration, the Canadian Prime Minister added. Macron was even more emphatic, calling on the other G7 members to resist what he warned was a potential U.S. drift towards further isolationism and crude hegemony. Macron has previously accused China of pursuing hegemony in Asia. The 6 other countries of the G7 represent a market which is bigger than the American market, the French president said. I believe in cooperation and multilateralism because I will resist hegemony with all my strength. Hegemony is might makes right. Hegemony is the end of the rule of law. Macron said he would do everything in his power to help Trudeau's presidency of the G7 to succeed and produce a joint statement on Saturday that can be signed by all 7 members. However, he argued that other countries should be ready to have a G6+1 outcome, sticking to a text that enshrines their common values, even if Trump does not sign it. The desire for all 7 to sign a text can't be stronger than our requirements for the contents of that text, Macron said at a joint press conference with Trudeau in Ottawa on the eve of the summit. I think we would be making an error if we said we are ready to give up everything, not to talk about the Paris Accord or climate or trade, just to have that signature. At last year's G7 summit in Sicily, the leaders all signed a communique, but the statement made clear there were deep differences on the Paris Climate Change Accord. Maybe the American president doesn't mind being isolated today, he said, but added that U.S. workers would be the first to suffer from a trade war between Europe and the U.S. We are all engaged in conflicts in Syria, in Iraq, in the Sahel, in different places in the world. We are allies. Our soldiers stand shoulder to shoulder to defend liberty and our values, Macron said. You can't, among allies in this international context, start a trade war. For army, it's a question of principle. Macron expressed support for Trump in his expected summit with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, but also warned that the U.S. president's abrogation last month of a 2015 multilateral deal on the Iranian nuclear program cast doubt on the credibility of such agreements. The Trump administration has threatened to impose sanctions against European companies that continue to do business with Tehran, an effort the US has said it will resist. Macron said the message of other G7 leaders to Trump on the Iran deal should be, "You're not comfortable with an agreement signed by your predecessor, maybe just because it was signed by your predecessor, but don't stop others from respecting it, and don't push Iran to leave, because today it's the best protection we have."